Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Mohenjo-Daro glass layer, evidence of nuclear warfare 000 years ago. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. At the Trinity nuclear test site in New Mexico in 1945, the world's first atomic explosion fused the desert sand into a glassy green mineral scientists named trinitite. The extreme heat of the blast had melted silica into glass across a wide area, a signature that, researchers later argued, had a precedent. At Mohenjo-Daro, the ancient Indus Valley city, abandoned around 1900 BC, excavators found fragments of fused silica scattered across the ruins. In 1979, Italian researchers David Davenport and Era Vincenti published a book claiming that Mohenjo-Daro had been destroyed by a nuclear explosion in 2000 BC. They cited the fused glass, skeletal remains found in unusual positions, and ancient Sanskrit texts from the Mahabharata describing weapons, the Brahmastra, that produced blasts of heat rivaling the sun. The theory spread widely through 1990s internet forums and alternative history publications, and has never entirely disappeared from popular consciousness. The actual archaeological record of Mohenjo-Daro tells a quite different story. But understanding exactly what happened to this city and why the world's first urban civilization quietly dissolved remains one of archaeology's genuinely unresolved questions. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Ancient technical knowledge is remarkably vulnerable. It lives in the hands of craftsmen, in the minds of engineers, in the institutional memory of workshops and guilds. When a civilization collapses through invasion, plague, climate change, or internal conflict, that knowledge can vanish within a single generation. There is no guarantee that what is written down will be preserved, and much ancient knowledge was never written down at all. It was transmitted orally, apprentice to master, in a chain that a single catastrophe could permanently sever. This vulnerability helps explain what might otherwise seem impossible, that the ancient world possessed capabilities we did not recover for centuries or millennia. The Romans knew how to make self-healing concrete by mixing volcanic ash with seawater. When the empire fell, the recipe was forgotten. Medieval European builders worked with inferior materials for over 8,000 years before the technique was rediscovered through analysis of surviving Roman structures. The knowledge did not disappear because it was suppressed or hidden. It simply died with the people who held it. Apply this principle more broadly, and the anomalies of the ancient world become less mysterious, not in the sense of being explained, but in the sense of being plausible. If Rome could lose a concrete formula for a millennium, what else might have been lost? What might advanced cultures in earlier epochs have discovered and then lost, leaving only fragmentary traces, a strange artifact here, a suggestive diagram there, that later generations would struggle to interpret? This is the question at the heart of every anomalous discovery from the ancient world. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, Let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Mohenjo-Daro glass layer, evidence of nuclear warfare 000 years ago, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Mohenjo-Daro was one of the two primary cities of the Indus Valley Civilization, occupied from approximately 2600 to 1900 BC in what is now the Sindh province of Pakistan. At its peak, it housed an estimated 40,000 people and featured sophisticated urban planning, including grid streets, a centralized drainage system, and standardized brick construction, infrastructure that would not reappear in the region for centuries after its abandonment. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered trinitite, the glassy mineral produced at the Trinity nuclear test site in 1945, forms when intense heat from a nuclear explosion fuses sand or soil into glass. Similar glass formations occur naturally from lightning strikes, producing localized structures called fulgurites. Researchers have also identified ancient glass fields in the Libyan desert and at other sites, typically attributed to meteorite impacts, volcanic activity, or intense localized heat sources. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The Mahabharata, one of ancient India's great Sanskrit epics, contains descriptions of weapons with devastating destructive power. The Brahmastra is described as producing a pillar of fire and smoke, burning everything within its radius, causing illness in survivors and rendering land infertile. Alternative history researchers cite these passages as evidence of ancient technical knowledge. Scholars of Sanskrit literature classify them as religious and poetic imagery functioning within the epic's supernatural narrative framework. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, David Davenport and Era Vincenti published 2000 AC, Distruzione Atomica in Italian in 1979, arguing that Mohenjo-Daro was destroyed by a nuclear weapon approximately 2000 BC. They cited fused material at the site, ancient texts describing powerful weapons, and what they interpreted as an epicenter of destruction visible in the city's layout. The book was not reviewed in peer-reviewed archaeological journals. Its claims entered popular circulation primarily through 1990 alternative history publishing and early internet forums. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of skeletal remains were found at Mohenjo-Daro during excavations in the 1920s and 1930s, some in positions that initial excavators described as suggesting sudden death. Davenport and Vincenti cited these as evidence of a mass casualty event. Subsequent osteological analysis of the remains established they came from multiple different periods of the city's occupation, not from a single catastrophic event. and showed signs consistent with disease and ordinary burial practices rather than instantaneous mass death. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. John Marshall led the original excavation of Mohenjo-Daro beginning in 1922 and published a comprehensive report in 1931. His report documents the city's street grid, drainage system, public bath, and artifacts in considerable detail. It does not describe a layer of fused glass across the site. The claim that a widespread glass layer exists at Mohenjo-Daro originates with Davenport's 1979 book, not with any primary excavation report from Marshall or subsequent archaeologists. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Mohenjo-Daro glass layer, evidence of nuclear warfare 000 years ago. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Mohenjo-Daro was destroyed by a nuclear weapon or similarly energetic blast in approximately 2000 BC, as argued by David Davenport and Era Vincenti. This theory cites fused glass fragments, skeletal positions, and Mahabharata weapon descriptions as converging evidence. No peer-reviewed archaeological study supports this interpretation. No radioactivity has been detected at the site, and the Indus Valley civilization showed no evidence of the military-industrial infrastructure needed to produce such a weapon. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the fused silica fragments found at Mohenjo-Daro are localized fulgurites, glass produced by lightning strikes, or kiln waste from the city's industrial processes. Both explanations are consistent with the small number of fragments found. Neither requires exotic energy sources. The claim that the fragments constitute a site-wide glass layer has been significantly exaggerated in secondary sources relative to what the primary excavation reports actually describe. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that Mohenjo-Daro and the broader Indus Valley civilization declined gradually between 1900 and 1700 BC due to climate change, specifically the weakening of the monsoon system, combined with shifts in river courses that disrupted agriculture and trade. The skeletal remains reflect ordinary mortality across centuries of occupation, not a single catastrophe. This is the mainstream archaeological consensus, supported by sedimentary, paleoclimatic, and osteological evidence from multiple excavated Indus sites. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Mohenjo-Daro glass layer, evidence of nuclear war 4,000 years ago, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes Shireen Ratnagar and other leading archaeologists of the Indus Valley Civilization have explicitly stated that no uniform glass layer exists at Mohenjo-Daro. The fused material cited by Davenport consists of a small number of fragments scattered in one area, inconsistent with the wide field of fused material that a nuclear or similarly energetic explosion would produce. The discrepancy between the claim and the primary excavation record is substantial. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented no detectable radioactivity has been measured at Mohenjo-Daro at levels inconsistent with natural background radiation. A nuclear explosion of sufficient energy to fuse surface material would leave isotopic signatures measurable for thousands of years. Multiple geological and archaeological surveys have been conducted at and around the site without finding anomalous radioactivity. The Indus Valley Civilization produced no weapons beyond simple bronze tools and showed no evidence of military fortifications or weapons manufacture. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the Mahabharata's weapon descriptions, including those of the Brahmastra, are embedded in a narrative of gods, demigods, and supernatural combat that no serious scholar of Sanskrit literature treats as technical documentation. The texts were composed centuries after the Indus Valley Civilization's decline and show no geographical or cultural connection to Mohenjo-Daro. Interpreting religious epic poetry as a record of nuclear weapons requires selectively reading poetic language as literal engineering description. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Mohenjo-Daro glass layer, evidence of nuclear war 4,000 years ago. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The nuclear war hypothesis for Mohenjo-Daro has zero support in peer-reviewed archaeology and has been explicitly addressed and dismissed by specialists. Claims originating in Davenport's 1979 Italian-language book proliferated through English-language alternative history, publishing in the 1990s, and reached mass audiences via early internet forums, where they became self-reinforcing through repetition. The legitimate mysteries of the Indus Valley civilization, its undeciphered script, its remarkably peaceful character with no evidence of kings or warfare, and the still debated reasons for its decline are genuinely remarkable and remain active areas of research. The civilization deserves serious archaeological attention. The nuclear war narrative actively distracts from that work. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Mohenjo-Daro glass layer, evidence of nuclear warfare 000 years ago. From the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Mohenjo-Daro ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.